Today let's talk about our non-dominant hand, our weak hand, our problem hand. The hand that just can't keep up. Maybe it feels stiff, maybe no matter what you do, you just can't get it to work or feel right. Well, we're gonna talk about why that is and how to fix it. We're gonna do a few easy exercises to fix this, but first we have to know what to look for when training so we can be as efficient as possible. Regardless of lack of chops, the problem is more likely inconsistent or bad technique habits that are holding you back from your playing that you might not realize you're doing. So in this video, I'm gonna help you build up your muscles, but I'm also gonna take you through all of the tendencies I see, how to fix them, and then maybe even fixing something about your dominant hand along the way. This makes the process of building up your weak hand way faster than just doing a bunch of chop building exercises. The first thing we want to look out for is having a completely different approach in your weak hand compared to your strong hand. And these things are a lot easier to see when you're playing in front of a mirror or when you're recording yourself. So let's go through these issues regarding approach from bottom to top. So your arm. If your arm is in an unnatural shape, or if it's in a different shape compared to your dominant hand, then we should fix that. One of the things I see a lot is the height of the arm being inconsistent. Keep in mind that we want everything from our shoulders down relaxed. One of the first areas of tension can be your shoulder, where it wants to lift up a little bit while you're playing. Playing with this kind of tension is really going to get in your way, and you might end up having to bend your wrist further down than you'd want just to accommodate for the extra height. Also, if your arm is too far in or too far out, it's going to affect your wrist shape. It's going to affect the way that we move the stick. And this might not be that noticeable to you when you're playing or when your sticks are at different surfaces like they usually are when we're on the drum set. So work on this first on one surface like a pad or a snare. Watch what you're doing with your arms and remember to keep them fully relaxed all the time. Similarly, if your seat is too high or if your snare is too low, you might find yourself kind of reaching and playing with too much of a downward angle, which affects the rebound of the stick and will lead to us having to control it way too much. All right, moving up to your wrist. Your wrist shape can be an issue. This is actually the problem I see the most. Like maybe while we're playing, having our thumb kind of turn out to make a straight line with our forearm, which is a shape that we don't want to play with because too much repetitive motion like this is actually going to injure you. Because of this kind of crooked shape, your movement won't be as natural, and that'll get in the way of our rebound and control. The same thing applies to if you turn your wrist too far in, but I barely ever see people do that, but still check on it. The ideal wrist shape when we're playing is straight, just like if you raised your hand right now. So when I have the stick in my hand and I bring it down to the drum, it's kind of making a V. If I turn my wrists out, making that straight line, I get this like super acute angle. So as soon as I started to move my wrist out, everything started to break down. Completely affects the way we play and the way that we sound. Keep checking on yourself while you're playing, because most people don't notice that they're doing this. On that note, we need to make sure our wrist isn't breaking too much. A little bit of a break is fine, but anything farther is eventually going to injure your wrist and is giving you a less optimal point of contact with the drum. This will make your rebound suffer, and it'll get in the way of the natural movement we need to play with less effort. If the stick isn't rebounding correctly, you'll have to control the motion on the way back up, which is a waste of time, and that'll slow you down like crazy. All right, let's keep moving up the tree to our fingers. We need the stick to sit in the fingers of our weak hand the same way that it sits in the fingers of our dominant hand. Not just when you're holding the stick, but when we're actually playing. For example, when times get tough, I sometimes see people let the stick slide out to their fingertips, which completely changes our contact and mechanisms of movement, and ultimately it'll come from tension. One tension problem can lead to a lot more tension problems, and eventually our movement just sort of locks up. Let's get a tiny bit detailed about what our fingers should look like, and if you want to get way more specific about technique, I'll link a playlist up here where I go way deeper about everything. So quickly, we want the fingerprint of our thumb to be parallel with the stick, as much contact as possible. Our index finger is going to go directly across from that, and we can kind of relax it, and then the rest of our fingers just wrap around the stick. Everyone's hand shape is different, but I generally have the stick rest kind of in between these two knuckles right here. This gives us the most skin contact, which means more mass, which means more resonance, which means better sound. It gives us our control with equal contact throughout the hand, while staying completely relaxed and not squeezing. So every part of our arm, wrist, and fingers can be affecting our motion, which in turn will affect the stick's motion. So the second thing we want to be looking at is the motion of the sticks. For example, if you're playing something where your dominant hand is comfortable using its wrist, make sure you're using your wrist with your weak hand as well. I often see people's weak hands go into panic mode and end up tensing up our arm or maybe squeezing our fingers. The most common place for tension to start will be the muscles on top of our forearm. These muscles are responsible for lifting your wrist up, and for some reason, they tend to be the first muscles to tighten up when things get difficult. So when that muscle tightens up, it's kind of resisting our downward motion, which is like the most important part of playing. So let's try to feel those muscles and understand how to release the tension. So put one hand on the top of your forearm and then squeeze. And now breathe a little bit and release. Try making a fist and moving your wrist up to tense up those muscles. And now try to relax them without letting go. It's kind of like a mind over matter thing, I guess, like understanding how to relax our muscles while we're playing without stopping. When we tense up our arm, our bigger muscle groups are taking control of the smaller muscle groups that we should be using. Bigger muscle groups are slower, so know what it feels like when you're using them. So the next thing to look for is beyond tension, it's the movement approach of our sticks in general. The key word here is relaxed velocity. Moving the stick down at full velocity while being relaxed enough for it to do what it needs to do on the way back up. The moment the stick hits the drum, and exactly what happens after that, is the most important aspect of movement. Think of how we throw a ball down to bounce it. So if you find that you're stopping the stick on the way down or back up, then you have no chance. Most of the time, I'm seeing the stick stop or hesitate even for like a microsecond the moment that it hits the drum. That completely throws off the natural rebound we're getting in the way of physics. If your phone camera has a slow motion setting, use it and check out what's happening when you're trying to play something you're struggling with. Watch the motion down, watch the stick's response, and watch the motion back up. All of that should be seamless. Even if you're playing downstrokes where the stick doesn't come all the way back up, you should still see the stick behaving the same way. These are kind of hidden issues because you might not know that you're doing them and they're really hard to see, but they're going to ruin what you're trying to do. If you do find that you're struggling with this, the best thing to do is to really work on your stroke types. Full strokes, downstrokes, taps, and upstrokes. You can watch this video if you want to know more about that. Alright, all that's out of the way. That was a lot of talking, but let's get to the exercises. Remember, don't just rail through these exercises trying to build muscle. If you have a bad habit and you don't fix it, it's going to make things worse. Be aware of your technique at all times. So we're going to do 2 exercises. The first one's going to focus more on the hand-to-hand dexterity between our right and left, and the second one is going to work on our chops. So this one's a 4-bar exercise. We have measure of 1/8 notes, measure of 1/16 notes, measure of 1/8 notes, measure of 1/16 notes. For the first measure of 1/8 notes, we're going to do 1 off our right hand and then the rest off our left. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Then we'll do 16th note singles off the left hand. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Next measure we'll do 1 note off our left and then all the other 1/8 notes off our right. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then a bunch of singles off our right hand. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Then we just repeat forever. While we're playing this one, the focus is going to be accuracy in the hand-to-hand transitions, making sure that we're not making our spaces too small or too big. And within your technique, one of the things that might be holding you back is your preps. So that's while I'm playing my 1/8 notes on one hand, and I'm about to play my 16th notes on my other hand, how do I prepare for that note? So when we're doing our first go around of the exercise where we're playing our 1/8 notes with our left hand, we're going to end up prepping with our right hand for the 16th notes, which will most likely be a lot more natural if you're right-handed than the other way around. So you can use that as an example for second time through. When we flip it, how does my left hand prep compared to my right hand? When we're playing singles, our weak hand, or our left hand for a lot of us, is usually the one playing the offbeat. So placing it well around the 1/8 note on beats can be part of the problem for your left hand being slow, regardless of maybe it just can't keep up, right? We want it to prep very naturally and hit right in the right spot. That one's just awesome. This exercise has fixed so many hands. So next exercise is really going to be a muscle building, chop building kind of exercise. We still have room in here to think about technique and to think about preps and all that stuff. But when we're doing this exercise correctly, the real focus is just chop building. So this is going to be the rhythm 1E and for 4 beats on the right hand. Then we do 4 beats with both hands. And then we do 4 beats with the left hand. And then we just keep going back and forth like right, both, left, both, right, both, left, etc. until the end of time. The first few things you want to be looking for in this exercise: am I playing my 3s with my weak hand the same way I'm playing it with my strong hand? So if I'm at a tempo where my dominant hand is comfortable playing everything with a controlled wrist stroke, then I don't want to be using my fingers with my weak hand. Or if I'm at a faster tempo where I'm using kind of a combination between my wrist and fingers, I don't want to be just trying to muscle everything out with my weak hand. When you get to a tempo that's almost pushing it for you, just keep repeating it over and over and over and over again. That's how you're really going to build your chops. But just make sure you're staying relaxed while you do it and that your technique isn't suffering. Well, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a subscribe, a like, leave a comment. If you're new to this channel, check out some of my other stuff. There's a lot more on the way. Check the description for links to my website for lessons. There's also a link to my music down there you can hear on all platforms. And there's a link to my Instagram where I got a lot of cool behind the scenes life stuff going on. All right, see ya.